Most people don't leave behind evidence. They're cleaning up after themselves. And what are you going to take a picture of? You can't take a picture of a smell.
Technology in hospitality isn't about replacing people. It's about giving hotel teams better tools to create exceptional guest experiences.
We designed our robots to complement the hotel associates, absolutely not replace them. By taking care of those routine, repetitive interactions, the hotel associates have more time and more energy to focus on where the actual human touch matters most.
Imagine a scenario where your guest arrives, they go up to their room, they realise they've forgotten a tie for the following day, an important meeting, and they're stuck. We propose to build a world where that guest can now have everything that they need that's available in the city to their hotel room in about 5 minutes.
What is the biggest mic drop moment a client has given you?
The biggest mic drop moment. Well, okay.
Welcome back to Lobby Talks, where we take you behind the scenes of hospitality and events. I'm Carly, and today we're exploring one of my favorite topics, technology. From AI-powered concierge robots to smart sensors that help protect guest rooms and the latest innovations transforming meetings and events, technology is reshaping the way hotels operate and how guests experience them. In this episode, we're sitting down with several companies that are leading that change. We'll learn what problems they're solving and how hotels are using their technology today, and what the future of hospitality might look like. Let's get started. Our first guest is a company that's already making an impression here at Marriott Tulsa Southern Hills. If you visited us, you've probably met Tulse, our concierge robot. But Tulse is just one example of what's possible. I dialed up Sharon Yang, Chief Technology Officer at IntBot, to learn more about how their robots are helping hotels improve guest service, support staff, and create memorable experiences. Take a listen. Hi, Sharon. It's great to have you here with us today. Thank you for taking the time to join us.
It's great to be here.
Wonderful. Well, Tulse has become a huge part of our hotel. Can you talk about what your other robots, kind of the problem that they solve within our industry here?
Of course, we believe the biggest challenge the hotels today face is to delivering the exceptional service at the time that the guests come in, whether it's late hours or whether they are looking for directions, asking about local attractions. They just want the service at the moment. Our robots help fill that service gap. Today, Tulse has been welcome the guests, answering a lot of questions and providing directions. Also collect guest feedback, assist with checkout experience. We are at the same time, we're also expanding those capabilities, such as integrate with the whole property management system in the backend, so that we can support additional guest or workflow in the future.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point there about having the first face, because I've checked into a really large resort before and I didn't even immediately know where the front desk was because the lobby or the entrance was so grand, and there wasn't like immediate staff in that area right at that entrance beyond the valet or beyond the bellman to kind of guide me to the next step. So I think that's a really important utility, is being able to place something right at that entrance that's always manning that spot 24 hours a day.
And the robot will be always as energetic as it has been.
Right. No breaks needed, no rest and recuperation, 24/7 greeting guests. And that's huge for our industry because we operate 24/7, and staffing can be a challenge sometimes in our industry. So I'm curious what creative ways hotels or the other spaces your robots are deployed, how are they using them to support the event experience?
So one of probably the most creative way that one of our hotels guests, they have been using the robot as a so-called chief vibe officer. So that means that instead of simply just answering questions, it has become part of the hotel's personality and brand. It welcomes guests with its unique character, share local recommendations, introduce hotel amenities, and create memorable moments throughout the guest stay at the hotel. Um, Maybe what's especially exciting is that the experience actually is not limited to the lobby itself. It connect with the guests through the hotel's digital channels, creating a more consistent experience before the guests arrive, during the stay, and after they leave. That's where we think that the hospitality is heading towards. So the robot will not just be a service tool, it will become part of the digital ambassadors, help define a hotel's unique guest experience along with the lobby presence.
Yeah, that's very smart for that hotel to be using it as kind of like a mascot, right? A guide. That way, before even stepping foot in the hotel, you might see that robot or a photo of it and say, hey, this is going to be your one stop shop when you need to know something, when you find something about the hotel or about the area. That's really cool. I like that. When guests first encounter the robot, is there anything about the way they're interacting with the robots that's not what you expected, or that's different? Like, what's their typical reaction when they walk in and see these robots in full swing, talking, greeting, directing people around the hotel? What's the most common reaction you're getting?
So the common first reaction is always curious. So they they just wondering what is a robot is doing here at the hotel, and then they kind of approach that and then give it a try. And but once they start to talk to robot, what strikes us most, and as time goes by, we feel that probably is the unique value that IntBot has been instilled into IntBot robots, is that our robot has a human touch. And so when guests are interacting with our robot, they're not treating the robot as a machine. They are treating our robot like another member of the hotel team. So they will tend to say thank you after the conversation, and then they will sometimes actually engage with the robot as they would with the concierge for many minutes, sometimes 10 to 15 minutes.
That is special that your robots are very intuitive and kind of are geared towards the hospitality industry specifically, because working in hotels, we kind of develop a specific verbiage when we speak. Everything is very professional. And whatever you place in your hotel, event center, in your space, you want it to reflect that same professionalism, right? So that's key. And I think that that's where you did something really right and really unique, is because a lot of the robots we're seeing may not have those special personalities or the professionalism that yours have. And it's all on purpose, right?
Yes, that's what IntBot does.
Love it. So hotel associates are all also curious about the robots you have deployed. Some of them might even be a little fearful. Can you talk about why these robots are enhancing the staff service and not necessarily immediately replacing them or even long-term replacing the humans in hospitality?
Yeah, absolutely. We designed our robots to complement the hotel associates, absolutely not replace them. The robots, they are extremely good at handling repetitive interactions, answer the same questions throughout the day, greeting guests whenever they came into the hotel, and providing directions. They also fill service gap during busy check-in hours that the human hotel associates are not available. Also in late night hours or maybe large events, always typically we're short of hands. That's where that robot will step in and to help with the hotel associates. By taking care of those routine, repetitive interactions, the hotel associates have more time and more energy to focus on where the actual human touch matters most, and to really have that personal connection with the hotel guests. That's where that we think that human and the AI agents will work together and enhance the overall hotel experience.
I could not agree more. I really think that if you have ever been behind the front desk during a really busy event, and you've had to say maybe the same thing over and over again, right? Where's registration? And you've said it maybe 20 times because 20 different people have asked you where registration is. That 20th time, you have a little fatigue, right? Like it's not going to come out as welcoming as it did the first time because you've heard the question 20 times before and it might not be presented in the way that you mean. When we have something stationed there to kind of better direct people throughout the hotel, welcome them, show them the lay of the land, then we can focus more on making those personal connections, right? Having those long conversations. And we don't feel fatigued by the little repetitive questions over and over again to the point where we can be curious with guests and ask more about them. And when we're curious and we have more time to chat about who they are and why they're traveling and less about here's where you need to go and directing and more informational conversations, then we have more opportunities to get to know them and create those memorable experiences. So I really see the value in this because I've been that person at the front desk for many, many hours asking the same questions and answering the same questions over and over again. And you get fatigued. You do. And you don't want that to be seen, right? I think that's the greatest thing about your robots is they don't have that fatigue. Every person who asks where registration is, they're going to get the same cheerful response. That's great. So I've got to ask, because I've noticed this with our robot at Marriott Tulsa Southern Hills, is that different age groups kind of have different reactions. And we understand that, you know, it's a big novelty item for kids. They think it's pretty cool. Are you seeing that within your data or within the other robots that you've deployed, that different age groups have a big different reaction to your technology?
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, for the children, they're naturally more playful and more curious, and then they typically come to robots and then, you know, have a very intuitive chat with robots. Another interesting thing we have often observed that it's parents actually, even if they just on their travel alone, and then when they saw the robots, and then they will take a video, for example, for their kids and ask robots to say some kind of a story or maybe some greeting to the family at home. And so they will kind of FaceTime with their kids and to see the robots. So that's something we observe repeatedly for parents. For the business travelers, of course, they typically want to be more efficient, and they came to ask a question, get the question solved, and then they're way to go. And then for the more senior people, so they tend to be maybe initially questionable and then cautious, and then they don't feel, hey, why a robot needs to exist in a hotel. But once they start to have that natural conversation, and then they also start to kind of treating the robots as a kind of some human, similar human concierge type of service member, and so that makes them feel kind of at home as well. So
I've seen that too. I've seen a lot of older generations giving task-based requests to the robot stationed in our lobby, like, can you get some towels to my room? Can you do this? And they appreciate that, but several of them are cautious and not sure how to react yet. And we've also seen the parents get out their cell phones immediately to record things for their kids as well. And kids all around naturally curious and excited, but they've seen this before, right? It's not the first time. I love that. So how are hotel teams reacting when you're deploying a robot? Are they excited, nervous? Have they been giving feedback about the utility that they provide?
Yeah. I think, Karen, probably you are the most suitable to answer that question. But from our perspective, the hotel associates, initially, they probably has a little bit more questionable reaction. They will think what a robot can do. Can they do similarly a good job as we expected them to do? Will our guests feel less welcomed with the robots? So I think there is some kind of initial doubts, but once the robot starts to work with the hotel associates and help to offload some of those repetitive tasks, we typically received kind of the appreciation and acknowledgement from hotel associates. They quickly realize the robots actually has been helpful. They're not creating extra work, but also they're not replacing these hotel associates, but they are helping hotel associates to be able to focus on more important tasks during their daily work.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, part of that feedback you might have gotten from our hotel team, definitely. We just, in the beginning, when we first connected with your company, we had so many questions, and a lot of them were fear-based. But now that we have this robot deployed, we have several staff members that kind of treat Tulse as part of the team, and they've really seen the utility, and none of them have been replaced. They think it's fun.
A good team member.
Exactly. They think it's fun. We've dressed them up like us. We've incorporated in part of our employee celebrations. It's part of the team, but we also really see the utility, especially with translation services. I think so many of us have struggled because we do have a lot of international guests, and we do have a team that represents over 15 different countries. So we are very unique to have a hotel team that's so diverse and has people that speak different languages. But are they all available 24/7? No. So I think that's the biggest, thing that Tulse brings to our team is those translation services. And once they realize that this robot can do something that none of us can be readily available to do at any time, that's where they really see the solution that we needed on our team. So that's definitely helping bridging the gap between, oh no, is this person going to replace us too? Is this robot going to replace us too? Oh, this robot's providing a service that we couldn't do before, and it's helping our team. So I think that's the most exciting part that our team has found, beyond also the novelty of it. I mean, our team is engaging just like some of our guests are engaging by creating videos and taking selfies, and just excited to be interacting with a robot for the first time. So beyond just translation, what other utility are hotel teams finding most valuable?
From the maybe another aspect is from a hotel operational perspective, that every guest interaction the robot has with the guests help the hotel to better understand what guests are asking for, what services they value most, and where the improvements can be made for the hotel to make the guests happier. So those insights help hotels to identify the service gaps, respond more quickly to guest concerns and to improve their operations and improve the customer satisfaction.
Yeah, it's really key for hotel teams to be able to respond to feedback in real time. It's very difficult for us to see a poor review on something that we could have resolved while the guest was here with us. But a lot of guests, they don't always want to tell the person at the front desk what is happening. And maybe they might feel comfortable telling a robot what is happening or just give feedback that, is meant for higher leadership when they understand that this robot is the data you give it is going to get to them. So we're finding a lot of guests give us valuable feedback about little insights that they notice. Maybe they don't want to give us a bad review because most of their experience was good, but they noticed a little something. And we're finding that the feedback, because you have such a great user-friendly portal to review that data, the feedback we're getting in there is actionable and little things that we can correct that we don't always see come through the reviews. And then if we can follow it up in real time and correct it with that guest might not go on a public platform and give us a poor review. They might just tell the robot, we get a notification, we're able to solve it in real time, and they leave with a better taste in their mouth.
Yeah.
All right, Sharon, so looking ahead, what are some new AI technologies or different technologies that you're working on or exploring?
So we're expanding our robots to with additional workflow assistance. As I mentioned earlier, that we are integrated into the full property management system, so that we can get into the check-in, check-out, help with those, and then maybe help a guest to book additional travel itineraries. All of those, essentially, you can consider our robots to be a physical agent being there and to do a lot of tasks today with a lot of digital domain tasks. Our robots should be able to gradually enhance with those capabilities. But most important from IntBot is what we call as a social intelligence, not just for the robots, not just simply answering guest questions. They are able to understand the people, read the room, and then interact with people and offer their help and assistance much more naturally, and to know where and when to proactively offer help and to reach out and to do whatever they can to make the guest most happy.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I like how both things you're working on are they work together. They work hand in hand, right? Integrating with that PMS and also having the social wherewithal to be able to hold those conversations to execute a good welcoming check-in, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. If a hotel isn't using your technology, what opportunities are they missing?
So we think the biggest opportunity is probably the leveraging the AI-powered robots to elevate the hospitality in multiple ways that simply just not possible before, right? So one aspect is, today's guests expect a very fast, personalized, memorable experience. So the robots be able to fill in the gap and offer the assistance at the moment it was most needed, and to read people's kind of different status and then understand when they need the help most and provide that personalized help. I think that's one the technology can definitely work with our hotel associates to provide the best experience with. And then just as importantly as we mentioned, every guest interactions actually becomes opportunity for hotel to learn what is the guest's experience at the hotel and what improvement hotel can do to improve the guest stay at the hotel. So on both ends, I think that's what today and in the future the hospitality will be moving towards with the technology and with the robots working along with the hotel associates together. And then our mission again, so it's to enhance and fill the service gap and to make the hotel hospitality the best ever. And then that's where that hotels hasn't been employed the technologies will miss.
I love that, enhancing the service gap. And we know that there are gaps in this industry because of, staff turnover or resources different hotels or event centers have. And that's huge. That's amazing. I really appreciate you joining us, Sharon. I know you're a busy lady, so thank you so much for taking the time with us. We really appreciate learning all about IntBot and all the technologies you have and hosting our own concierge robot at the Marriott Tulsa Southern Hills.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Technology isn't always something guests can see. Sometimes it's quietly helping hotels protect their rooms, reduce operational costs, and respond to issues more effectively. Check out this chat I had with Michael Linton, Chief Revenue Officer and General Counsel at Rest. He filled me in about their innovative technology for detecting and managing smoking incidents in guest rooms and how it's helping hotels create a better experience for both guests and staff. Hey, Michael, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Carly.
We appreciate you taking the time. I'm sure you're a very busy person. You've got this really cool company that I'm really excited to talk to you about today.
I'm always happy to talk with hoteliers, so thanks so much for having me. Much appreciated.
Wonderful. Well, let's get into it. Hotels have been non-smoking facilities for quite some time, as long as I have known them, but cannabis and vaping provide a unique challenge for us hoteliers. So let's just talk about what the new challenges that us operators are facing within the last 5 to 10 years.
Sure. I think it's interesting because I was in hotel operations, dating myself like over almost 15 years ago now. But what I found really interesting about Rest when I was asked to come and join the company was that, they were addressing a challenge that, existed even when I was in hotel operations. And, fast forward those 15 years when I joined the company, it hadn't changed much in terms of, the method for enforcement, right? It was like the policies, they've been there for decades. Don't smoke in non-smoking rooms. And it's funny because, even the policy and the fee for smoking has been sort of set and forget 20 plus years ago at $250, and nobody really thought of it, probably because they never were able to mostly charge it. And because, you were relying and putting that burden on your housekeeping staff and those that were in the rooms. So I think that, a lot of things have happened in terms of that challenge. And I think it's just become more amplified. So it's not just traditional cigarettes. Like probably 15 years ago, I don't even know, if e-cigarettes or vape, I know they weren't as prevalent as they are today. And I know for sure that recreational marijuana wasn't as widely legalized as it is today. So I hear, more and more from operators, just how frustrating it is that they're stuck with this, old manual process, but the smokers evolved, right? They're vaping now, they're getting access to recreational marijuana, and, they're using it in guest rooms. And that, that's a big no-no. And it's, without some form of technology, it's been pretty difficult for them to actually enforce that because most people don't leave behind evidence. They're cleaning up after themselves. And what are you going to take a picture of? You can't take a picture of a smell.
That's so true. It's getting so challenging right now with like the vapes. Like there is no, we don't have evidence. We don't have photo evidence. And that's kind of been that process for so long, is you need to back up the charge, that $250, so it's not going to be flagged as fraudulent. So you need some sort of evidence. And that's where us as hoteliers have been struggling for so long. So let's get into that. What happens right after someone is detected or something is detected in a room? What comes next using the REST technology?
Sure. So, we've really built this to work well for a hotel operation. So, we've tried a number of different things with our beta partners when we were rolling this out in, 2021 into 2022. And, that was prior to I even, me joining this team. I think we've really, pioneered sort of this vertical specifically for hotels because, for one, from day one, we built the product for a hotel, meaning, it could not require any ongoing maintenance. So no cartridge changes, no battery swaps. It shouldn't add work. You shouldn't be replacing the, let's play crime scene investigator work of let's try to find evidence of this smoking with all of this upkeep and maintenance. So we try to build it to flow with the hotel's processes. So, everything from we can integrate to a PMS if that PMS, has an open integration where we could automate it. But I'd say an overwhelming majority of the hotels we work with, they prefer to get kind of a bulk update right before the night audit process that says, hey, these were the smoking events that took place today. And then they, handle those accordingly, assessing, the smoking fee. Some hotels will leave, a message on the door, they'll alert the guests. It's really all a matter of what that operator's, personal preferences, what their brand standards are, and how they want to carry it forward. But ultimately, it's really been built for hotels. So it's not, in the way, and this is the way I thought of it too when I first learned about the product was, unlike a fire alarm, which is trigger happy and a life safety device for, good reason, right? I would rather evacuate the whole building just with the chance that there could be a fire, and let's, make sure that our guests are safe or the people in the building are safe. Here it's quite the opposite, where our system is continuously monitoring air quality, environmental metrics, 24/7, 365, and it's reading that and it, is identifying the unique, profile of smoking and vaping activity, and it will not trigger an alert to the hotel unless it's, we have the utmost certainty that, smoking or vaping is taking place. So by, just the act of smoking, by the time our system typically registers or identifies a smoking event, usually the smoking is, stopped. So it would do, little to no good for a hotel to run up to the room and bang on the door, because then all you're doing is inviting, an even less pleasant guest experience, which, you're going up, accusing them in their private space while they're relaxing of smoking. And, that's just riddled with issues, especially with vape, because vape dissipates so rapidly and it doesn't tend to leave a lingering scent. So, you go up there, you bang on the door, unless they were smoking a cigarette or something can bust it, odds are most of that physical evidence is, since dissipated. So you're left with, staring a guest in the face and accusing them of something. So that process tended not to work as much. So generally speaking, hotels get their reporting, some choose to do additional, investigation after the fact, and mainly to make sure that the room is left in a condition that it can be turned over for the next guest, which is ultimately, I think, most important for delivering on that, brand and guest promise of a smoke-free environment. There's nothing worse than checking into a hotel after a long day on the road that just smells cigarettes. It's, I don't know many smokers that like the smell of smoke, let alone a non-smoker going in to lay their head down and they're like, God, it just stinks like cigarettes or something like that.
That is so true. I feel like you're looking at it from really both angles, right? You're looking at it from the guest perspective who doesn't want to come into a room that smells awful or just doesn't have really good air quality. But you're also, your company had a lot of forethought when you're putting this together by making it maintenance friendly for hotel teams, because we are very busy. And when we can do that preventative maintenance on the room, typically we can't sell that room, right? So that preventative maintenance either has to happen when the guest is naturally not in it, or we have to take it off the shelf. And we don't want to do that for small things like this, right? Like replacing cartridges or checking batteries. So I really appreciate that forethought you put into it. Sounds like some of you might have worked at hotels.
I'm based here in Las Vegas. I've worked in a number of the casino resorts, and it's like, yeah, maybe for a 50 to 100 room hotel, is it the worst thing to have to go in every 3 to 6 months and, do a cartridge swap? Maybe not. But also, I've worked for a small Fairfield Inn, property years ago when I was in the Navy, and we had one maintenance guy, and that guy was busy doing real maintenance tasks. Like, so to all of a sudden burden him with going to those rooms. But, to the point of the large resorts, it's like when you have a 4,000 room hotel, it's a pretty large endeavor, and that's a big labor drag to have to go up and task them with doing that. So yeah, we really try to build it in a way that you plug this thing in, and if it goes offline, there's built-in memory. It'll auto reconnect to the Wi-Fi. It's we try to think of as much as we could, to make this as frictionless as possible for the hotel ops team and the maintenance team.
Yeah, that's huge. And PMS integration. So when you can integrate with PMS, does that mean it's automatically charging those fees and managing those fees as well?
So typically, most properties that do the PMS integration, most are independent or the large casino properties. The large casinos, it's almost a must-have because, volume, right? So you may have, and it's not a handful, it's not one or two, it's, 20 or 30. And if, I've been that graveyard hotel manager, and depending on what night's going on, I may be dealing with a lot of chaos on the floor, right? You got people in Vegas partying, you have domestics, you have, any number of situations that you have to respond to, not to mention your date roll and night audit checklist. So, the last thing you want is to add a bunch of manual tasks, and you'll find a lot of resistance from an ops team for that. But similarly in the gaming markets and any branded property or anybody with a loyalty following, you don't want some automated process to, rub a very important repeat loyalty customer the wrong way. So when we deploy it, we can set rules for like a gaming property. They can say, like, if this is a casino player, they fit within this tier of average daily theoretical, then, don't auto charge. We'll assess, and maybe we'll, have the host comp it. So it's, it's all flexible and it's all really configurable. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, it is those larger properties that are leveraging the automated process, but they do set rules and they do have some oversight and review to it.
Oh, I love that you can configure it based on your needs and based on your guests and your VIPs, because we certainly don't want to upset those high rollers at the casinos, right?
That's amazing.
Always say, like, that guest, they can smoke all they want because they're spending, $500,000 a year in our casino. And it's like, okay, I mean, I get that. So yeah, the last thing you want to do is upset that person, make them feel mistreated. Most certainly not worth, displacing hundreds of thousands in business for a couple $100 smoking fee.
It's so true. And I like how you touched on kind of the chain reaction of events when someone's smoking and who responds to that, because I've been that person working night audit in the middle of the night, managing many situations that need my attention immediately, or having trouble rolling the date with all the paperwork. I've been that person, but a lot of operations are like, well, if we need to add another task or another policy or do something in real time, then we need to add this to their checklist, add this to their list. And your technology kind of happens, that solution is right there. You don't have to add it to their checklist. It doesn't become another burden to put on them. And then you're also kind of reducing labor costs because of it, right? Because you're helping with that chain reaction. You're reducing the steps when someone smokes on what happens next, right? And you can set it up seamlessly based on your property, which is really helpful because every single property has unique needs, right?
Totally. Every property has a different mix to some extent, even from one market to the next. Like even in the same market, the same flag, same brand, same even sub-brand, one block off, they're going to have a different business mix. And I see it even with just, violations and smoking violations, where one hotel may be very corporate heavy and, they don't have a lot of FIT traffic. And although they may be in one of those destination markets that you're thinking everybody's partying, maybe they just don't match what, the initial sort of cursory look profile would be. So, that's the beauty of this, is that, you're really just, if you look at it from the perspective of installing this, gives you the ability to have more reliable, consistent insight into when smoking is taking place. Because prior to that, you're totally reliant on, another guest complaining, which that's like the worst case, because now you're not only dealing with the, remediation of the room that's been smoked in, but potentially compensating other guests for, oh my God, it smells like marijuana in this hallway or whatever. You can get proactive on top of that in terms of, making sure you're cleaning the room and, it's not getting missed. Because what if the housekeeper, the GRA is cleaning that room today, is just getting over a cold and he or she doesn't have a sense of smell, or they're really busy and they're just, they're just trying to get through their room list that they have to clean today. And they're like, whatever, I'm not going to even bother, because most of the time we report these things, they don't charge the guest anyway, and they just move past it. So this at least gives that proactive, consistent, visibility into, event in this room, give it extra, care when turning it over to make sure the next guest isn't impacted. And one other thing I didn't mention is that similarly, it doesn't alert in real time by design for the reason I described before, but say you're a manager and you're just doing a, floor inspection, you're walking on the floor and you're like, man, smells like marijuana. And I know it's coming from one of these rooms, but you're not going to knock on 10 rooms and hey, are you smoking weed in here? I mean, that's a bad experience too. You can go to our dashboard and you can query those rooms and see it right there before it, kind of goes through the normal alerting process of like, yep, we had a detection that would have normally come through maybe 11 o'clock on the report, but you can catch those and sort of nip them in the bud in those events that you had maybe somebody complaining of like, smells like the Cheech and Chong up in Smoke Tour up here, can you guys come check on that? Because I empathize with that. Like, I don't want to be that manager knocking on every door like, hey, we had a complaint, because that can really aggravate somebody if they were taking a nap or doing whatever. It's like, you're bothering me. I'm paying to be here. So it helps you pinpoint it in those scenarios as well.
Yeah, I think that there's also a reduction to the financial impact there too as well, because you might be taking some of those rooms out of order while you investigate that. And that scenario you describe happens all of the time. And sometimes it's not the manager noticing it. Sometimes it is another guest. Well, that's more compensation that you'll have to pay out as well.
Right. Yeah. So now that's most certainly that's one of the biggest things that hotels love about this. I mean, but the initial sort of reaction, I'd say within the first 90 days of use is like, you're going to go from barely dealing with any guest, disputing a smoking fine to, anyone in hospitality knows, like, guests, react the way they react when you charge them something. And they're, I've never smoked a day in my life. And it's like, okay, so you're going to have a higher volume of those discussions, and you have to apply operational discretion, no matter what, right? And that listen to what the guest is saying, hear them out, and ultimately determine what is the best course of action. If sometimes the guest is outright just not telling the truth. I've heard all the stories, right? Like, I saw the lady, smoking a cigarette in the parking lot, like, throughout her stay. And she's telling me like she's never smoked. She's a big health advocate, but she yelled at me and said she's going to write a negative review. She was going to do this, that, and the other. It's like that scenario also isn't worth the bad review. So we always encourage hotels, use your same operational discretion as you would a guest saying, I didn't take something from the mini bar, or I didn't use the internet, I didn't watch that movie. At the end of the day, you got to make judgment calls all day in hotel ops. And that's why I probably stayed so close to the industry, because it's no day is the same, and you're forced to have good street judgment, which, it's a certain type of person that thrives in that environment, and they're my kind of people. So.
Yeah, I'm really glad that people from the industry are creating new technologies for industry because you said it right there. Like that's that's the problem we're facing. It's not we know the process, we understand the process, but not having something to back up our side or that evidence there, it kills the process. It doesn't always happen, and that costs more money, that costs more time and more inconvenience to our guests, which is what we were trying to avoid in the first place.
I mean, and really the most like, especially with the because based on the past or, anyone who's not using a technology like ours, it's mostly smell. Most guests don't leave physical evidence behind for you to go and photograph. So that effectively means that your policy is unenforceable, and then if you say, well, it smelled, very heavily of cigarette smoke or marijuana, you know, most guests are savvy enough where they're going to say, yeah, it smelled like that when I checked in. In fact, I was going to call and complain. And you know what? I want my night comped. And then all of a sudden you're compensating the rule breaker. And it's just, a vicious, frustrating cycle. So, yeah, it's one of those things that I think that it'll continue to evolve over time, but it's most certainly an adjustment for any property that first takes this on because, now it's like, it's something that they've had forever, but they hadn't really, had to deal with because I think most operators have kind of thrown their hands up. Like they may get the one or two, unicorn case a year where they're like, man, these people left like barrels of cigarette butts behind. Like, let's get out the cameras. But in most cases, they don't do all that.
It's true. Yeah. It's hard to get that evidence. And I'm just happy that you're like disrupting that process to provide a tool for us because we need it. It's been, like you said, nothing's changed with the process. Nothing's changed with the fee. The only thing has changed is you have a technology that can actually detect the air quality, which is huge. So I need to know, what are hotel operators, what opportunities are they missing by not deploying your technology?
Sure. I mean, I think that, we've touched on a number of them, right? So for one, you kind of have this toothless policy that's out there, and it's really exposing like any hotel we've deployed in, even in some of the heaviest smoking hotels, right? Like you can just think of it, the biggest party destinations, the most likely, cast of characters. It's still only a fraction. It's like, a couple percent of your overall guest pool. So, I think the opportunities being left on the table is like, you're not delivering on your promise for a smoke-free room, smoke-free environment. You're allowing the bad actors to continue, their bad acts without any type of, compensation back to the hotel to offset the cost of, diminishing room product over time. Because after a while, it's like, how many times can you ozone a room? Not to mention if somebody's doing combusted smoke, they're burning things. So it's, diminishment of the FF&E in the room, the guest experience, all that's being left on the line. And really, you're placing all of your, hope, in your housekeeping team, which that's not their job to detect smoking, right? They're not human smoke detectors. They're there to clean the room, turn it over, and create that pleasant sort of experience for guests when they check in and throughout their stay. And just generally speaking, I'd say that a lot of properties are deploying this, and when they're fully enforcing it, we actually see a reduction of smoking activity at those properties over time. It's usually after the first year where we're trying to compare year on year, smoking incident rate. And I'm not saying it goes away entirely, but word gets out that, I can't smoke in the airplane bathroom. They have detectors. They'll bust me. The same is applicable on the hotel front. So I think that, mostly what they're leaving out is, satisfying their guests, recovering previously lost revenue, and doing so without, all the friction that comes with the manual process. Not to mention, we didn't even touch on this, but the manual process, when you capture evidence, a photograph, that is not the highest likelihood of winning a chargeback just because you have a picture. Because I have hotels that tell me all the time they lose chargebacks, pretty frequently when it comes to photographic evidence, because how do you prove that was that guest room that you were in? And it's like, it's very difficult from that front too. But the good news is that, credit card companies do accept our smoking report as valid scientific objective evidence of smoking. And we have processes, through partnerships with groups like Chargeback Gurus that, it's a pretty good set of recommended best practices for how you, can not only charge this, but retain it, which is obviously most critical because this whole product's useless if, all the guest has to do is dispute it and you lose the chargeback, which is not the case.
Right. Well, that is huge that they will accept that as proof, as evidence. And I think that just kind of shows like how much thought that you put into this because you saw a best practice and you saw how flawed it was, and you're really just providing tools and to correct that. And your technology now has credibility because it is valid evidence. And you're right. Anyone can, especially now with AI, take a picture and throw an ashtray in there, right? So it's not credible evidence any longer. So I'm just really appreciative that Rest has offered a solution for us hotel operators. And I'm also really appreciative, Michael, that you joined us here today.
Yes, thank you so much, Carly. I really enjoyed the time. Appreciate the opportunity to share more about what we're doing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We're going to pause right here and pick up right where we left off next week with a special bonus part 2 of Tech in Hotels. We'll see you then.